everyone, Chris here from MTR Network, and I am finally back. I know I have not been keeping up with as many reviews and videos as I say I've been doing. We've been doing the movie reviews, although we didn't do Incredibles 2, and I'll get into why later on. But I'll be honest, it's just been, once all of our shows that we've been, Deepalm and I have been reviewing went off the air, I've been kind of taking a little bit of a break. It's just been... It was a lot this season, and so I kind of need a little bit of a break before coming back and doing more videos because we're doing all the podcast stuff, and the YouTube stuff is just kind of extra for us. We're trying to build a presence here, and not to mention we're also about a month out from just a little bit over a month away from San Diego Comic-Con, and myself, Shanna, and Phenom, we have been getting our life together to try to figure out what we're going to be covering at San Diego Comic-Con, what press rooms we're going to be trying to get into, who we're reaching out to, and things like that. So, yeah. And then on top of all that, I'm trying to prepare my house to sell. So it's a lot of shit going on. So I just have not, there'll be times when I'm like, let me go and record this video. And be honest, all of a sudden I'm just like, I don't feel like doing it. So I don't. So, apologies for that. I'm going to try to get back into doing more video stuff. Again, the podcast stuff is always my first, that's always my first, I got to get the podcast stuff done. I'm going to try to get back to doing more videos. Like I didn't do a poll list for last month. So I'll make sure that this month we do one and get back into doing that kind of stuff. But one of those things that I'm like, hey, got to do a video review for is we did, because again, we're trying to get all our stuff together and we're working overtime. We got early access to Luke Cage Season 2 from Netflix. So that is actually kind of what I've also been doing the last 2 weeks, is trying to watch all 13 of those episodes along with everything else I've been doing. So I wrapped that up, finished that up. I'm going to give my early thoughts because the embargo is up now. If you're watching this, the embargo is up for review. So I'm going to give my thoughts on Season 2. If you want to hear me go into more depth of this stuff, make sure you subscribe to the podcast. I think we're going to put this on the Super Tuesday feed. So it'll be on Super Tuesday Recap. Search for that on iTunes, Stitcher, wherever you get your favorite podcast at. Search for Super Tuesday Recap. And you'll hear myself and Phenom talking about this. And then we'll probably also do another one later on with some more spoilers when we have the Doctor and some other people who have watched the full season come in, and we'll discuss in more depth some of the spoilers for Luke Cage Season 2. So before I get into like what I thought of Season 2, I'll go and say I enjoy Season 1. Like, I understand, and look, I totally understand why some people have a problem with Season 1 of Luke Cage, and I fully admit that, you know, once you get rid of Mahershala and you get rid of Cottonmouth early in that season, he kind of have a dip off because he was such a good villain up front, and then you kind of get rid of him and then you fill him in with a villain that people don't really care about. And I know a lot of people have a little bit of issues with the 13 episode structure of the Marvel Netflix shows. I actually think that the Defenders actually was really good at 8, although I would have gone 10 for them. I think 10 is their sweet spot, and they could probably get away with 10. I will say, though, I do think that for all the problems that Iron Fist had, which it had plenty of fucking problems, Defenders, and while I'm not finished with it yet, I'm getting really, and I know I'm behind on this. Do not leave comments about how far behind I am. I have not seen Season 2 of Jessica Jones, and I haven't finished The Punisher, but I've started The Punisher. I think they've kind of gotten a little bit more of a handle on the 13 episodes and how they do things. Like, one of the things I think that was really good about Iron Fist was how they didn't do that thing where they try to do a switcheroo and halfway through the season give you a whole nother villain. You stick with one kind of villain throughout most of the season. You might add other things in there. You might do some other turns with the villain, but you kind of you stay with a core theme, and you stay with that throughout the entire season. I think that worked for Iron Fist. One of the few things that did work for Iron Fist. That'll kind of go into my feelings of Luke Cage Season 2, because I think that's one of the things that works here as well. So, let's do it. Let's get into... I'm going to start with some of the things I really enjoyed about this season. So, let's start right there. before I get started into this and go into the cohesiveness about this episode, I do have to say, if you're worried about any kind of spoilers, there aren't that many spoilers. There aren't really spoilers in here, but because I've gotten some assholes in the comments complaining about things that are readily available to find on the internet, like who's going to be in the season, who the villain is, what the team-ups are, I want to go ahead and tell people right now, if you want to go into Luke Cage Season 2 completely blank, cut this review off, go watch it, then come back afterwards, all right? I don't get any complaints about any of that stuff. So, having said that, I will say that to me, the cohesiveness of this season is definitely a lot better than the Season 1. I feel like, again, once you had Mahershala's Cottonmouth drop out after about halfway of that season, and you had to replace them, and it just felt jarring. You know, you felt like you were building somewhere, and then it got the rug pulled out from underneath you, and it just didn't work. I will say here for Season 2, I think they do a better job of slowly building up somewhere, and you never feel like they're dropping off. And they don't really take Luke off the table. And I'll get more into how they use Luke this season, which could be a downside for some folks. But I do think it's a lot better than the way they were doing it in Season 1. And I think this is something that they found with all of the Netflix Marvel shows, where it felt like they'd always start really coming really hard and fast and heavy in the first few episodes, and then they would just be this drop off. And you know, a lot of people say that the 13 episodes might be too many. To me, I think 10 is probably would be a good setting for them. Although I will say that you know one of the positives, and I know there weren't that many positives for the Iron Fist season. I think one of the positives was it was a very cohesive story that kind of moved in the right direction, and story-wise and narratively, I think it was narratively and structurally the best structural season they've had. Even if the stuff inside of it, like again, them rushing it with Finn Jones and not giving him the training he needed to get, I think that kind of hurt them. But outside of that, like the structure of it worked, and I think they've been taking that structure for their other series, and it's very apparent here with Luke Cage Season 2. I think the cohesiveness of this season just feels better. It flows better from there. It starts off like a little bit slow, but then it starts picking up progressively, and then you get a really entertaining last few episodes. I think that slow build is where they need to go for that. So yeah, cohesiveness is definitely one of them there. When you think of Luke Cage, and when you think of Luke Cage, Iron Fist, Misty Knight, and Colleen Wing, these are characters that, yeah, on their own, they're fine, but you really think of them with these other characters here. So in this season, you get that. You've probably already seen the little video featurette they did that has Colleen Wing and Misty Knight together, teaming up in the bar, wearing their colors from the Daughters of the Dragon series. They work, and it helps that Simone Mystic and Jessica Henwick, they gel together. I think they work really well together, and they're good. They're a good pair. So when you get them, it's an exciting moment to have those two teaming up together on screen. Another one is Mike Coulter's Luke Cage and Finn Jones's Iron Fist, Danny Rand. It works out really well, and I'll be honest. I think that this is, for all the problems that the people have with Finn Jones and Danny Rand, from the fact that they should have gone with an Asian American Iron Fist, totally agree. The fact that he did not look good in Iron Fist, he did not. He was not good in those action scenes there. He was a little bit better in Defenders, and you had that. You see kind of why they again, not excusing the not casting Asian American part. But if you're going to go Finn Jones, you're like, still, if you had to go with a white guy, why'd you go with this guy? His interactions with Mike Coulter and Defenders were like, oh, wait, you know what? I can kind of see a Powerman and Iron Fist with these two actors working together. And you kind of get that for an episode in this season. You get them teaming up. And it's an episode of those two together. And you get these really, really great moments with just their dialogue, with Danny talking to Luke. You get some really cool team ups and action wise with the two. I mean, it's exactly what you would have wanted. And it works out really, really well. And I was actually really, really surprised. And honestly, it did feel like Finn Jones was way more comfortable in the role of Danny Rand in this one episode than I've seen him through all 8 episodes of The Defenders and all 13 of Iron Fist. Like, this is Danny Rand. If you're gonna go with the white guy Danny Rand, this is the one. If this is the one they led with, you still would have gotten people complaining, rightfully so. But I also think you would have had more people going, oh, you know what, I can at least live with this. Kind of like what happened with Benedict Cumberbatch being Doctor Strange. You know, if you knock the roll out of the park, people are still going to complain, rightfully so, because there is a legit complaint there. But also, you're going to get some people going, well, you know what? He is good in the role, though, and you really weren't getting that with Finn Jones. But when you see this team up, when you see them, and again, not just because of the team up, him himself in the role just feels more comfortably, and you can tell he's done some training. They actually got him some martial arts training. You know, it's funny what happens when you actually let your actor get a chance to fucking, you know, learn what he needs to learn to be in a fucking role. So the team ups are great this season. I think that works out really well, and not just, you know, with these major characters. I think there's also some really good team ups with just the different, you know, from villains. Like the Shades Mariah relationship in this season is really good. Shades has his boy Comanche. Like, there's some really good tandem acting scenes in this season that work out really, really well beyond just your comic book character team ups that you wanted. There are some really good under the surface team ups, and I don't even think they're team ups, just pairings on screen that work really, really well for Luke Cage season 2. Mustafa Shakir plays Bushmaster in this series, and you know, when you're coming off of the performance Mahershala put in and him being Cottonmouth, you had to get somebody that's going to knock it out. And what makes Bushmaster, what makes his character so good is that he has a real motive, just like, he basically has a good motive to being a bad guy, just like Cottonmouth did. But then he also has the aspect of he can stand toe-to-toe with Luke Cage physically. So where season 1 of Luke Cage had to go from Cottonmouth to Diamondback to give you that physical physical fight between a bad guy with Luke Cage, because you needed that stuff there, and so they had to go with 2 different characters. They didn't have to do that this season with Luke Cage, because you have a guy who can serve both roles. And you know, kind of going back to what I was saying about Danny Rand getting a little bit more action, I think the action scenes this season were way better. Like the fight scene, like the first time you see Bushmaster whoop somebody's ass, you're like, Luke might have a problem. He's gonna have he's gonna have a fucking problem. And you know what? Luke does have a fucking problem. And you know, Luke has to put some work in beyond just being indestructible and being powerful and strong. He has to put some work in, and I think just, you know, the physicalness between those 2 characters works out really well. But then there's also just the character of Bushmaster, and when you learn his motives, when you learn what's driving him, and what they do again this season is you don't really get, you get bits and pieces of what's motivating that character, but you don't really get the full story until way later on in the season. And then when you do, you're kind of like, damn, I kind of get it. Like, you might get the Bushmaster was right shirts. You might get them. I'm just saying, because, like, you might not agree with his methods, but it's like when you see what's happened to him and what he's had to go through, you're like, I can kind of understand where he's coming from. And to me, when you can get a villain that makes you go, I can kind of understand where he's coming from, that's when you can get a really good connection to also to your hero, but also to the season as a whole. And so he does really well. And then you having that character play off of Shades and Mariah and all these other characters, it's like it works out really, really well. And also just some of the other characters they bring in. I think her name is Gabrielle Denise. She plays I I don't know if they announced who she's playing, so I guess I won't spoil that. But her character has some moments with Bushmaster and things like that, and her character has some moments with Mariah. Like it's like all these characters come in, and there's a really good chemistry between all of them, and it's really, like I said, this season's really about family, because they also had the late Reggie Cathy, who plays Luke's father. So the season's really about family and bringing it all together, and it's they do a really good job, and it's all kind of centered around Bushmaster coming into the city. And I think it's also nice to have a character with an accent. He's Jamaican, and you have that culture, and that you're bringing in a new culture, and it shows you this multicultural nature of Harlem and this part of New York, and that it's not just African American culture and one set of black culture here. His character brings in a whole other set of culture that we haven't really seen in these characters, and I think any of these movies and comic book shows and things like that, like, you have a legit multicultural aspect to it with their own beliefs and culture and things like that. And I think that's what that character brings in there. And so it brings in things that, like, I would almost say that because of the way they set up Bushmaster, it's almost like they did a redo of season 1, where they took some of the things they were trying to do with season 1, they bring them all together into season 2, and now they did a lot better there. So yeah, Bushmaster, it just brings a really great element to this season here. I think more than anything else, the music really defines the Luke Cage. It did in season 1. Season 2 is no different. I mean, they bring in Rakim, they bring in Faith. They had, let's see, Jada Kiss, KRS-One, like, and what there are so many times where both the live music and then the music they just play in the background. You'll hear some Wu-Tang, you'll hear Nina Simone, you'll hear Mobb Deep. Like, from the live performances are great, because when they do live performances, they then also juxtapose those live performances with actual scenes. They go cut from the live performances to different scenes happening at that time that really get you into the mood of the series. Like, it's I almost want to joke and say this is the only musical I'll watch, and it's not that like that. So you don't just break out into song and dance, but it's like music is such an important part of black culture, and to have that music to continue to be an important driving factor of Luke Cage, I think is an important aspect of it. And I think that's another reason why I love season 1 so much. It's just like that music and the way that they bring that in, it really kind of it really brings you into the show. And I know it's a huge part, and I just love that what they bring that in there. So I know Lucy Liu directed their first episode. I know they had 6 of the 13 directors this season were women. And let's see, I know some of the women you had in here. You had Sally Richardson, Melissa Shelton was here, Nima Burnett. Again, 6 of the 13 directors were women, and I'll be honest, I think it really helped. They add in between Misty Knight, Mariah, Tilda, who is Gabrielle Dennis's character. Between just those 3 black women there, I think it was very important to make sure you had women directing, to make sure we get those characters written correctly. And even beyond just that, I mean, there are other female characters in this season. Again, a lot of them women of color, almost all of them black women. And so I think it was very important to make sure you not just bring in female directors, but you bring in women of color directors to really help with the writing and directing of these scenes. And I think it definitely shows. This show, even though it's called Luke Cage, I think definitely revolves around a lot of black women as well. and what they mean. Like I think a couple of my favorite episodes were directed by women, and I think it's very, very important, particularly when you get a character like Misty Knight who is struggling with, losing an arm. Does she want to be a cop? Does she want to leave the department? And having that real struggle, I think that in season 1 you could see that struggle there, but it was kind of hard to really feel it. Like this season, I think you're really understanding why she's having that struggle, and those moments. I think she's done a lot better. Like I like Missy the first season. I really liked her in this season. I think it's because you got women directing the season and kind of guiding how her scenes go, and I think that really worked out for her. So, all right, so let's get into some of the things that didn't work, and I'm gonna say right off the bat, I really enjoyed this season. I think I liked it more than season 1. Real quickly, some of the things that didn't work. I think the first thing is, I mentioned this before, it's a little slow. I think the first 3 or 4 episodes, you're kind of trying to figure out where this is going, what's going on here, what's happening. It almost feels like some of the stuff is kind of cheesy. There's this little sports center thing that happens, a little cheesy. And I guess this goes into the bigger thing here. Slight spoiler here. It's not too much of a spoiler because I'm not telling you what happens to the character, but around episode 3 or 4, Claire is taken off the table, and I think the season gets I know the season gets better after that, and I don't know if it's necessarily because of the chemistry between the actors or the character. I'm just not feeling the characters, but I don't know. I don't think like I like Rosario Dawson. I think she had better chemistry with Charlie Cox on Daredevil. And I think it also doesn't help that we're coming right off of Defenders, where we saw Christian Ritter and Mike Coulter together. We had Luke Cage and Jessica Jones, who we all know that's the ticket. And for me, it's like watching him with anybody else is kind of like, this is temporary. Can we just get to the point? Can we get to when he's with the character that he actually has really good chemistry with, and that we all want to see? And I don't know if it's by design. I don't know what it is. But when that is kind of taken off of his shoulders, I think that the season breathes a little bit more, because you're not bogged down in this relationship that you're not invested in. And maybe that's what it is. It's not that it's bad. It's just, I'm not invested in Claire and Luke being together. Like, I don't give a shit about that relationship. I don't think any of us do. I think all of us are more like, oh, let's get Luke and Jessica together. Let's move on with that, because that's the relationship that works. And honestly, I know what's not going to happen, but again, I think Rosario, I think Claire was better with Matt. And I know that's not going to happen, but again, I just feel like they haven't found a place to put Claire. She used to be the connective tissue to all these shows, being the night nurse. But now it's kind of like, we've almost outgrown her and don't need the character anymore, because like what her character providing is now being provided by others. And so I kind of just want her to kind of go away. So there's that. The other thing too with this season is you're going to find yourself not really being like, oh yeah, this show is called Luke Cage, because Luke isn't really the center. I mean, he is the center, and he is there to kind of, he's almost at times being like, what you're going to find is that the main villains, the conflict in this series really isn't the villain going at Luke Cage like it was before. It's really kind of Luke Cage in between two villains, in between Mariah and Bushmaster. And, Luke Cage is stuck in the middle. So sometimes he's getting hit from one Bushmaster, sometimes he's getting hit from Mariah. And that's the thing where Luke's kind of in the middle. And you feel that. And I don't necessarily think that that's wrong or bad or make the season, or it's too bad. It's just that, when the show is Luke Cage, sometimes you find yourself going, oh yeah, Luke Cage is here. He's going to do something. And he is, oh yeah, yeah, oh, that's right. Luke, yeah, right. And I think it's just another thing where Luke is no longer, is once again not the most interesting or even close to being I would say even the top 3 most interesting character in his own show. I mean, I would put it Bushmaster, Mariah, shit, at some point Shades, you know, are all even more interesting than Luke in this season. Now, I definitely do think that by the time this season ends, Luke is in a place, I feel like we finally got into a place at the end of the season where Luke is in a place where I'm like, oh, now I give a fuck about Luke Cage. So there is that. And, yeah, so. And the last thing that I will say about this season is, I almost didn't want to say this because I think they did a lot better job, but I'm going to mention it. The inconsistent power levels of Luke Cage. I will say that in the 3, we've seen him 3 times now. We've seen him in Jessica Jones, we've seen him in his own series, Luke Cage, and then we saw him in Defenders. I will say that this is probably the most consistent his power is. And they do a good job of kind of explaining, one, they make him a little bit stronger and a little bit more resilient. And I think they do a better job of explaining how this time. And I think he's closer to the Luke Cage that we all know. And we see him do some cool, like, tough guy, tough Luke Cage, Powerman shit. But you still sometimes go, wait, how the fuck did that knock him out? Come on, Luke, really? Now you're injured, that hurts you, but this didn't hurt you? There are still some times when you see that. Now, and I will say that the caveat to this is, I think that when we see these inconsistencies with Luke this time, I think they do a better job of explaining why these are inconsistent. Because remember, the first time in Jessica Jones, he got knocked out by a shotgun blast to the head. And I'm like, what the fuck? What? Really? And in this season, it took a lot more than that to do it most times. But still, there's still sometimes where it's just like, Luke, really? That hurts you? That fucked you up? Really? Really, my nigga? So I think they did a lot better. And again, I know it's hard with Luke Cage. Like, if you make him the power level that he is in the comics, you have no show, right? He's like, this nigga's indestructible. So I do think they did a lot better job this time of explaining that. And I will say, it's kind of going back to the goods. I think that his action scenes this season are a lot better and a lot more fun. And just wait for the one with him and Iron Fist. It's really, really great. So, anyway, folks, there you have it. That is my little kind of recap review of what I thought of season 2 of Luke Cage. Again, like I said, I'm gonna go into way more detail when we do our audio review. Again, go to Super Tuesday Recap and hear us talk about that, and then we'll probably do another one when we get into more detail, into more get into some spoilers when we go into another one from there. So just again, subscribe to us there. Subscribe here. Or we're gonna have some more videos out, particularly in a month. Like I said, San Diego Comic-Con is coming up, and we are going to be doing hopefully a lot of interviews that'll be up on this channel here. So stay tuned for that. And like I said, Luke Cage season 2 comes out the 22nd of June. I think you're gonna enjoy it. I know I really did. Like I said, it starts off a little kind of slow. Like, where is this going? But by the end, I was fully invested into it and really enjoyed it. And I think it really picks up. And I think it fixes some of the problems people had with season 1. It's fun. Like I said, even if you just go watch just for the fucking musical performances and the music in it, that's enough here. But yeah, there's some hardcore shit that happens here. So again, folks, thank you guys very much for watching, and until next time, we're out of here. Peace.